Good morning, my dear students. It's always pleasure to talk to you, and today I'm feeling honored that you invited me to present my paper. Um, what I'm going to do today is just presenting the first part of my paper because it's still, I'm still working on it. But today I will try to introduce the topic. The title of the paper is Archetypal Pairs, Type Personalities, and Epic Structure in Surah Maryam. The paper thoroughly investigates Surah Maryam from three distinct perspectives, delving into the archetypal pairs delineated in the Quran as stories. It meticulously analyzes the symbolic significance embedded within individual personalities and narratives within these pairs. Moreover, the paper underscores Surah Maryam's role as an exemplar of extended temporality, disrupting the conventional linear progression of past, present, and future. The structure of these archetypal pairs contributes to the creation of a comprehensive narrative epic, fostering a seamless continuity among seemingly disparate pairs. Surah Maryam therefore unfolds as a unified tapestry where each narrative builds upon the other, forming a cohesive bricolage that interconnects with remarkable fluidity. This interconnectedness weaves the surah into a singular canvas of subject matter, embodying a profound cohesion. In alignment with Todd Lawson's insights in his work on the Quran and Epic, Surah Maryam emerges as a narrative masterpiece where the interwoven stories form a harmonious and interconnected whole. The, the paper navigates through this intricate narrative, unraveling the layers of meaning and significance embedded in the archetypal pairs, ultimately contributing to a deeper understanding of the surah's thematic richness. What Lawson opines, he's of the view that there is also a sense in which the entire Quran, in its recounting of the history of humanity as call and response to the divine message, is uh, is one long grain or operatic epic simile and typological figuration. So, key to the Quran's method dictates that Muhammad is Moses and Jesus in the poetic or spiritual sense, and it dictates that his community is also their community. What happened to the earlier group will happen to them. So, the question is can, can the Quran really be the hero of its own epic? Can it be considered a meta epic, a schemorphic epic, or an incomplete epic? Or is it a text through which an epic quest and struggle is refracted in original, compelling, and challenging ways? So, to the degree that these questions are reasonable, it is also reasonable to pursue an attempt to delineate the distinctive features of the Quran's epic voice. So, I have divided today's talk and this paper into two important threads. And today I will try to explain and explore those threads. And in the next talk, we will understand the technicalities of epic and other structures. So, in chapter Maryam, the essential idea of all these stories, narrations, or what I refer to as archetypes, is best described in Surah Yusuf. In chapter Yusuf, God addresses Muhammad, stating that these best stories are revealed to make him aware of that which he was not conscious. This implies this implies that the archetypes and individual personality types presented in Surah Maryam, particularly the discussed pairs, are considered among the best. Therefore, I refer to them as master archetypes. So the first thread of the chapter initiates with the archetypal pair of Zachariah and Yahya, establishing the narrative tone. Zachariah, in his old age, fervently supplicates God for a son to inherit their legacy. Despite his advanced years, Zachariah's prayers persist, and Yahya dutifully serves God. The pair's most significant aspect is highlighted when the Quran conveys greetings upon Yahya at his birth, death, and then when he will be, resurrected after his death. This father-son archetype symbolizes hierarchy, with one subsumed under the other. So, building on this archetype, the narrative introduces the mother-son pair of Maryam and Isa ibn Maryam. Similar to Yahya's devotion to his father, Isa ibn Maryam expresses devotion to his mother. In his voice, in his own voice, Isa ibn Maryam echoes the sentiment of greetings on the day of his birth, the day of his departure from the mortal world, and day of his resurrection. This narrative addresses the attribution of family to God through Isa ibn Maryam, emphasizing the crucial issue of associating family ties with the divine. So, speaking directly, Isa ibn Maryam lends power to this narration, elevating both Yahya and Isa ibn Maryam to the stature of servants of God. This archetype plays a pivotal role in confronting the intense problem of linking familiar relationships with God. So, after that, the narrative significantly shifts with the third pair, Abraham and his father. Here, the fox turns to Abraham, grappling with his father's disbelief and embracing a divergent worldview. Communication breaks down, prompting God to transport the reader into the future, while Abraham, in breaking the chain of familial habits, becomes the progenitor of the believing Isaac and Jacob. The profound intent and message are evident. What Abraham is doing, Abraham disrupts the cycle of unquestioning adherence to ancestral beliefs. So in Surah Maryam, now the focus shifts from the Abrahamic father son dynamic to the Moses and Harun pair. Noteworthy is a transition from a familiar relationship to that of brothers, emphasizing their joint divine purpose. Unlike the believer Zachariah, it's intriguing that Moses is directly summoned by the Lord Himself, highlighting a distinct connection to the divine cause. After delineating various prophet pairs from Zachariah to Moses, the Quran takes a nuanced turn by spotlighting individual prophet personalities. And after that, it begins with Ishmael, emphasizing his role as a guide in steering his family towards the path of God. This familial aspect is underscored. The narrative then shifts to Idris, highlighting his Siddiq truthful quality. Shortly thereafter, the Quran speaks directly to the audience, addressing the chosen individuals and pairs. It asserts that these are the figures whom God favors and rewards, echoing the sentiments expressed in Surah Fatih's prayer for guidance. Interestingly, God adds a profound layer by stating that they are your progeny, emphasizing the filial connection spanning from Noah, Abraham, and Israel. This serves to highlight these figures as archetypes and forefathers, embodying qualities that one should aspire to emulate. Here concludes the first thematic thread, our narrative knot within this chapter. Now, let's come to the second thread of this chapter, because I'm trying to just explain some of the important threads in this chapter. So in Surah Maryam, starting from ayah 59, a new narrative unfolds, shedding light on a specific group that deviated from the mentioned pairs and their established practice. The emphasis shifts to their dominant trait, the negligence of salah and adherence to shahwa. The Quran meticulously chronicles their attributes, misguided beliefs, and practices, outlining the promised punishments. Subsequently, The Quran delves into apocalyptic and day of judgment narratives, creating a comprehensive depiction of the consequences awaiting those who strayed from the righteous path. So, before delving into the mentioned group's negative attributes, the Quran pauses to briefly highlight those individuals who repent and engage in right deeds. So, temporarily shifting to the timeless concept of heaven, it emphasizes that they will receive sustenance, rizq, and intriguingly underscores a speech act. They will not hear vain speech. The Quran emphasizes that this is the true inheritance provided by God to the pious, almost as if it becomes their rightful property. The pious are depicted as spiritually rich. After brief mention, the Quran shifts its focus to a specific group, placing them on the left side of the spectrum. It leaps forward in time to the day of punishment, proclaiming that these individuals, alongside Satan, will be gathered in the promised place of Jahannam. In contrast to the righteous space mentioned earlier, the Quran responsively chronicles the traits of this group. They are characterized as those who deny the impending day of reckoning, displacing reluctance and pride when the Quran is presented before them. Furthermore, they have crafted a parallel divine concept of God, which will crumble on the day of judgment. So, in response to all these traits and claims, the Quran employs a vivid image, asserting that they will be brought to hell bent on their knees, symbolizing the collapse of their pride and glory. So continuing with this narrative of those on the left spectrum, the Quran emphatically declares that their complete enticement by satanic forces. In a consistent, aggressive tone, it asserts that these individuals will be forcefully dragged to hell, aiming to dismantle their pride. So, towards the end of the chapter, the Quran revisits the theme of associating filiality with God, addressing the erroneous belief regarding Isa ibn Maryam. The severity of such disbelief is metaphorically conveyed, suggesting it has the potential to cause heavens, mountains, and earth to tear asunder. So, responding to these various forms of disbelief, the Quran intelligently emphasizes that all created beings are servants, underscoring the central purpose of these stories. The chapter concludes with two crucial reminders. Firstly, the promise of glad tidings for those who engage in the right deeds, echoing the pairs discussed in the initial thread, and those following their sunnah. So, secondly, a reminder of the wisdom, hikmah, and purpose of the Quran, expressed in a language accessible to its original audience, emphasizing that it serves as both a source of glad tidings and admonishment. So, So the conclusion leaves the choice to individuals, inviting them to align with either thread of pairs, or first thread or the second thread. The contrasting nature of both pairs and threads stands highlighted in this chapter, transcending various affiliations or choices. So the idea is this: both pairs and threads stand clear in this chapter, encompassing affiliations like Yahyavi, Maryami, Musavi, Abrahamic, Ishmaeli, Idrisi, or Muhammadi, or the choice of not aligning with any. So in this chapter, a distinctive thread weaves throughout the narrative, assigning each prophet a unique archetype or symbolic quality. Beginning with Yahya, characterized as Hanan, affectionate and dutiful to his parents, and then Isa ibn Maryam, who expresses his dutifulness to his mother. So this thread continues with Abraham being described as truthful, Sadiq, Moses as chosen, and Ishmael as true to his promise, and culminates with Idris repeating the trope of a truthful prophet, Sadiq Nabi. The Quran skillfully unites these archetypes under a master archetype, the shared act of prostrating and weeping before the Lord when confronted with his signs. So, this implies that all these diverse archetypes ultimately lead to a common stage of humbly prostrating oneself before the all powerful being. So, apart from these two important threads and the fluidity in narrative and the thematic continuity, which I will discuss, in another talk, using the framework of epic structure and other, there is another kind of pair discussed in this chapter, which is pair of heaven and hell. Very briefly. So in this chapter, after discussing the various pious pairs such as Zachariah, Yahya, Maryam, Isa, Moses, Aaron, the Quran uniquely introduces the promised heavenly abode for all the writers. This elevated place is described as one where they will not hear any vain speech but only greets every morning and evening. While the Quran often vividly depicts the finest foods and scenic landscapes of paradise, the introduction of the metaphor of a speech act or communicative act is particularly significant. We will see in other talks how this communicative process or act builds up in this surah. Using works like Angelica, New Birth, and or Todd Larson. So, the greater implication of this could be that a sign of an exalted soul favored by God is the ethical quality of their speech, emphasizing the importance of noble communication, ethical communication with the other. So in Surah Maryam, after presenting the brief descriptions of heaven and hell, God draws a significant contrast between these two destinies. So the Quran implies the metaphor of guests and divine hospitality for the pious, emphasizing that they are graciously called upon and invited, with preparations made for them. In stark contrast, wrongdoers are portrayed as being dragged to hell, symbolizing the humiliation of their pride and ignorance. So, here the Quran employs habitual metaphors and images to vividly convey the ultimate outcome of one's actions. So, uh, you know, so it's clear now. So, there are some important particular contrasting threads in this Quran. They are weaved with a particular kind of narrative structure, creating a kind of narrative fluidity or continuity, in line with the structure followed in different poetic forms. So today, I think I will conclude here. I leave you with the you. I leave you that you think upon it. Think about what I tried to tell you about different stories in the Quran or archetypes and their thematic and structural continuity, and then we will explore it in much more technical details. Thank you so much.